I once firmly believed that I had a loving wife and a decent job, until I discovered that my so-called perfect life was actually a well-woven lie. My wife, whom I always thought was a loyal partner, had an affair with my boss, the heir to the company. Let's formally listen to today's story of infidelity. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. It seems that the worst thing a woman can do to the man she claims to love is betray that love by cheating on him. Jack Thompson thought about this as he sat alone in the dark just a few hours ago. He thought he had it all: a great job and a good company with good pay, a nice home and a loving wife. He still had the first two, but the third was different. He thought about his life with Sarah, his wife of almost 5 years. He met her shortly after she joined the company where he works, the Market Financial Group, a company that helps small businesses with their finances. Like many others, she started out in administrative support, handling all the little clerical tasks that needed to be done in their business transactions. From there, she became an executive assistant to Ethan Mitchell, his boss, about 7 months ago. It's no coincidence that Ethan's last name is Mitchell. His grandfather founded the company decades ago and passed it on to his son, Howard, the current CEO. Howard brought his son, Ethan, into the business after he graduated from college a couple of years ago and started it like everyone else. So he could learn the ropes. He did, and was quickly promoted to his current position as regional manager, reporting only to Alan and the board of directors. Of course, at some point Ethan would become CEO, but that was still a long way off. Jack loved and respected Alan. Howard was something of a father figure to him and helped him transition back into civilian life after being wounded in Iraq. They met while Jack was undergoing physical therapy. Howard had just finished a meeting with the facility board and stopped to watch a Marine veteran rain. Howard saw something in Jack and bought him lunch that day. They discussed many things during this lunch, and Howard was surprised to learn that Jack had completed his 4-year business degree just days before being deployed to Iraq. Howard was impressed with the young Marine and offered him a job on the spot. Surprised, Jack accepted the offer and went to work for Howard the following Monday. This was almost 8 years ago. Jack finished therapy and focused on his work, taking night classes to earn his MBA. Then Sarah appeared. He was captivated by her the day they first met. After making sure that there would be no consequences from HR, he asked her out on a date. They dated for several months, fell in love, and eventually got married. Howard surprised Jack by paying for their honeymoon to Hawaii. 3 years after their wedding, Howard brought Ethan into the company. Jack hoped that something from the old man had passed on to Ethan, but he quickly realized that this was not entirely true. Ethan loved to show off, letting people know who his father was, and that one day he would be the one to occupy the large corner office on the top floor. Ethan somehow managed to alienate almost everyone around him. One day Howard talked to Jack about his son and expressed the same concerns that Jack had heard from others. "You know, I'll have to make him a regional manager at some point." Jack, Howard said. "I know." Jack said, "I'm counting on you to be an example. Maybe you can help Ethan transition into office." Howard said, "Can you do it?" "I think so." "Howard," Jack said, "it won't be easy. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside." "What's your honest opinion of him?" Jack, Howard asked. "Don't deceive me. Forget that he's my son. Tell me straight." "Okay, I'll tell you." Jack said, "He's too opinionated to be effective in my opinion. He refuses to listen to others, spends too much time flirting with girls, and likes to throw his name around. Sarah tells me he's a walking problem for every woman in the office. He not only loves to pursue women, but also to brag about it." Howard shook his head. "I was afraid of it. He said his mother spoiled him since he was born, allowed him almost everything. I was hoping that getting involved would help him grow up a little. I'll talk to him." "So when is Thomas going to retire?" I asked. Thomas Jackson, the current regional manager, worked for the company for many years and was loved by everyone. He had long talked about retiring and bought a home in northern Idaho so he and his wife could retire in the country while he was still young enough to enjoy life within the next 6 months or so. Howard said Hume's determined to do it personally. I don't blame him. Howard left the office promising to stay in touch. Jack knew he would keep his promise. There were other things Jack noticed about Ethan that he didn't tell the old man. After thinking about it, he realized he probably should have Thomas retired. A few months after this conversation, and Howard promoted Ethan to his position, Ethan quickly began making changes. Some of them were good, but Jack wasn't so sure about others. He continued to do his job and tried not to let Ethan bother him too much. Ethan did change as he settled into the position, but Jack didn't like it. Ethan was prone to micromanaging, often annoying the more experienced team members. He also liked to move people around, sometimes into positions that practically set them up for failure. One day, a little over 7 months ago, Ethan walked into Jack's office. He popped down in the chair opposite Jack as he talked to a client. When Jack hung up, he saw Ethan grinning. What can I do for you, Ethan? Jack asked. I'm thinking about hiring a new executive assistant, he said, and I think Sarah would be perfect for the role. My wife, Jack, asked that Sarah. Ethan nodded the grin, never leaving his face. The same one, Ethan said. What's wrong with Gretchen? Jack asked. Gretchen will son served as Thomas's executive assistant for many years. Nothing, Ethan said. She's just about to retire and the office could use some new blood. Yet Jack thought rather a new sight for Ethan. Have you talked to Sarah about this? Jack asked. Not yet, Ethan said. I wanted to talk to you first about. Jack asked. I appreciate it. But why? I wanted to know what she was like. Ethan said. After all, you live with her. You sleep with her every night. Is she demanding or always happy and cheerful? Is she playful or serious? I want to know what awaits me if I hire her. Jack didn't like the direction this conversation was going. Not at all well, Ethan, Jack said. Firstly, Sarah and I are very happily married and, yes, she always brings me joy. Secondly, she's married to me. Thirdly, she is a professional. If you think she is suitable for this position, then offer her this job. Whether she accepts it or not is up to her. But the most important thing to remember is that she is married to me. Jack deliberately repeated his words so that Ethan would understand his position. Got it, Ethan said. You've probably heard the rumors and are worried. I would be worried too if I were married to a beauty like Sarah. If she takes this job, it will mean travel sometimes overnight night. Are you okay with that? I trust my wife, Jack said. But Jack said, if she accepts the job knowing that it's part of the responsibilities, then she knows the boundaries and I expect you to respect those boundaries in our marriage. Of course, Jack, old man, Ethan said, the grin still on his face. I know you and my old man are close. He respects you and so do I. Believe me, I will never do anything that could come between you and Sarah. I hope so, Jack said. Who knows? Ethan said. Maybe this will be your promotion. That night Jack spoke to Sarah. Did you talk to Ethan today? He asked as she finished preparing dinner. Yes, she said. He mentioned something about wanting me to be his new executive assistant. And what do you think about this? Jack asked. Well, it will mean travel and maybe late hours, but it will also mean a nice bump in pay. She said we could really use some extra money, especially if we're going to have kids someday. Why are you worried about something? I just remember you telling me that he was a problem for every woman in the office. Jack said. Do you still think so? I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried. She said. I hear all the rumors. You know, do you trust me? He looked at her before answering. Of course I do, he said. But I trust him as much as I can throw at him. He came into my office today and asked how you were at home personally. I thought it was a little cheeky. It's just his way, she said. What did you answer him? She asked, raising her eyebrows. I told him you're always a joy. And I meant it. Jack said, I have also made it clear that we are happily married and I expect him to respect that. I myself expect nothing less. She said, okay. Jack said, so, are you going to take this job? I think so. She replied. That night they went to bed and made love before falling asleep. She accepted the job and, as expected, was away at least once every 2 weeks for 2 days. She also worked late at least 3 nights a week. Jack dealt with it as best he could and did everything he could to support Sarah in her new role. He looked closely but didn't see anything to indicate she was being unprofessional in her new job. Then the unthinkable happened. A little over 3 months ago, Howard suffered a massive stroke in his office. Paramedics were called and he was rushed to hospital. But he did not survive. The night he died without regaining consciousness, everyone in the company was shocked by the news and attended his funeral. Jack and Sarah were surprised by the number of people who came there. Ethan thought that his father's sudden death meant he would immediately take over Alan's office and become CEO. But the board of directors thought otherwise, saying Ethan was too inexperienced for the role. Despite Ethan's vehement objections, the board brought in Peter Brooks to serve as interim CEO until a suitable candidate was found. Ethan became a different person after this and decided to prove that he was ready to lead the company. He forced Sarah to work late into the evening almost every night and to accompany him on trips almost every weekend. It didn't Brooks still whether Jack and Dallas had plans or not. The schedule took a toll on both of them and their marriage. For starters, their sex life had virtually disappeared. He also noticed changes in Sarah's wardrobe, where, before she wore business and professional attire, she now wore things that were a little more revealing. Moreover, her attitude towards him changed. She was always outgoing, friendly, funny and respectful, but now she became more demanding, quick-tempered and began to make little barks at him. He thought it might just be stress from work. Finally, one Sunday evening, when Sarah returned from a trip to New York, he sat her down to talk Sarah. He said, we need to talk about what she asked with sharpness in her voice about us. He said, I barely see you. This Ethan schedule is not only killing you, it's killing us. We need to take some time off and rebuild our relationship. Sorry. She said, Ethan has a lot on his plate right now. It's crazy. I can't help it, tell Ethan. You're taking a week off. He said, you have time. We need to do this if we want to save our relationship. Sarah was silent for a few moments, collecting her thoughts. He could understand that this was bothering her too. Finally she nodded her head. You're right, Jack. She said, I need a break. Ethan has been pushing me the last 3 months. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I promise. Please do it, Jack said. The next day Sarah returned home happier than he had seen her in a long time. What's happened? Jack asked. I talked to Ethan like I promised, and he agreed we needed to take a break, she said. He said we could both take the next week off, as long as we came to a party at his house on Friday night party. Jack asked what party. Just a little meeting with him and some of friends. She said Jack didn't like it, partly because he couldn't stand Ethan, but also because he didn't think it was appropriate to have fun with his boss. As they say, intimacy breeds contempt. Plus he didn't know who else would be at this meeting. Do you know these people? Jack asked. I've met some of them. She said it's mostly his friends from college, but 1 or 2 of them work with clients. I don't know who else will be. I see. Jack said, well, okay. But only if you can come home at a normal time this week, can you? I think so, she said. But we have to work on the Hendersons' account on Wednesday. Ethan is having dinner with them and he wants me there. Jack knew about the Henderson manufacturing account. It has been a priority since Howard started working on it before his stroke. Okay, Jack said Wednesday evening. But for the rest of the week I want you to be home at normal time. Agreed. She smiled and hugged him. It's agreed, she whispered, kissing him on the lips. The next afternoon Ethan showed up at Jack's office and, as usual, sat down in the chair in front of his desk. As always, he had a smirk on his face. What can I do for you, Ethan? Jack asked. Ellie says, "You going to Friday night?" Ethan said. Ellie thought. Jack. Where did this come from? He called her that once and she made it clear that she hated the name. Yeah. We talked about it a little last night. Jack said as long as she gets home on time for the weekend, that we take next week off to repair our relationship. Of course, Ethan said, we're having dinner with the Hendersons on Wednesday. But I promise there won't be any late nights the rest of the time. What kind of party will it be? Jack asked. And who will be there? It's just an informal meeting. Ethan said a few of my old friends from Cole College will be there. One of them works for a client. But nothing fancy. Come in casual clothes. No need to bring anything except Ellie. Of course. Jack took note of this and nodded. Ethan wasn't finished. By the way, Jack, old man, Ethan said, making Jack inwardly cringe. You are right. Ellie is really nice to have around. I appreciate that you let her spend so much time working without any hard feelings. She's really good at her job. Honestly, I'd be lost without her. Jack didn't quite know how to feel about this. Glad you're happy with her work, Ethan, he said. But there is one question which Ethan asked. You call her Ellie around her? Jack asked. Of course, he said. Why, just wondering. Jack said that's all. He mentioned it to Sarah at dinner that night. Do you always let Ethan call you Ellie? He asked. I'm just wondering because you never let me call you that. I think he's my boss and he can call me whatever he wants. Sarah said, Jack, let it go. But it continued to bother him. The rest of the week went pretty well and, with the exception of Wednesday, she got home on time and they made love whenever they could. On Friday, after Jack put on jeans and a casual shirt, he watched Sarah get ready for the party and noticed the dress she had chosen. He had never seen the dress before and wondered when she bought it. It was much shorter than her other dresses and showed a lot of skin. Wow, Jack said you look like you could be eaten. Maybe we should stay home and play. She smiled. No, she said after we get back. By the way, where did you buy this dress? Jack asked. I've never seen it. It certainly doesn't look every day. I bought it last time we were in New York, she said. Ethan asked me to wear it tonight night. Of course he thought be careful. Jack said someone might get the wrong idea. She giggled. I don't think so. She said everyone knows their limits. We better know, Jack said, hugging his wife. He tried to kiss her, but she waved him off later. She said I don't want to ruin my makeup. They drove to Ethan's two-story townhouse, located in a rather posh part of town, and rang the doorbell. Ethan opened the door and invited them inside. 3 other young men around Ethan's age entered the living room and Ethan introduced them to Jack. Guys, this is the man of the hour, Mark Thompson, Ethan said with a big, smug smile on his face. Mark, this is John Whitehead, George Franklin and Alan Jenkins. Howard, by the way, works for Henderson. Jack shook hands with all 3 and wondered what Ethan meant by calling him the man of the hour. He also wondered why Ethan didn't introduce Sarah. Did she already know them? Ethan turned his attention to Sarah. Oh my God, Ellie, you look so damn hot in that dress. He said I knew it would. Doesn't she look damn hot, guys? He asked, turning to the other 3 men. They all nodded their tongues, almost dragging along the floor. Sarah smiled and turned around as if she was modeling a dress for them. They whistled approvingly. Jack had to admit that she did look good, but he didn't like Ethan's reaction. Where are my manners? Ethan asked. Let me get you something to drink. Ellie, I know you like white wine. How about you? Mark, I'd like white wine too. Jack said I haven't been drinking much lately. I have a low tolerance for alcohol. Jack didn't actually have a low alcohol tolerance. The truth was that he could probably get these guys blackout drunk. He practically stopped drinking years ago when he was in the Marine. In fact, he was angry when he drank and almost did something wrong the last time he got drunk. After that, he vowed that it would never happen again. No problem, Ethan said. Be right back. Ethan returned with the 2 glasses and handed them to Jack and Sarah took a long sip of hers. while Jack took several small sips. Jack's internal alarm increased and he vowed to stay sober for as long as possible. Something about all this haunted him. Ethan invited everyone to take a seat in the living room and Jack followed Sarah, noticing that she sat down on the love seat. He was about to sit next to her, but Ethan was there first. Instead, he sat down on the sofa, which stood opposite, and carefully watched his wife. Ethan looked at him for a moment. "Sorry, old man," he said. "Forced habit. I'm used to sitting in this spot on the couch." "It's okay," Jack said, looking at his wife. She looked back but couldn't read his face. They sat for a while talking about small things. Ethan looked at Jack before speaking. "My father told me you were in the Marines. He said this is true." Jack nodded. "Yes, I served for 5 years before I got a medical discharge," he said. John looked at Jack. "Marines? Huh," he asked. "Heard they're real tough guys. Have you ever seen combat?" Jack nodded slowly. He hated it when people asked about it. "Yes," he said quietly. Sarah looked at him, surprised he never told her about this. He'd spent the last few years trying to forget about it all. "He never told me about this." She said, "It's not something I like to talk about." "He said you know," Ethan said, pointing his finger at Mark. This matters, without a doubt. The best business analyst in the company, hell. He saved us millions of dollars in lost revenue. Moreover, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have this beautiful being as my assistant." Sarah smiled at him, and Jack noticed that it wasn't just a smile in return for a compliment. There was something else there. He also noticed how she seemed to hang on his every word. "Actually," Ethan said, looking at Jack, "I like to think of her as my work wife." He patted Sarah's bare leg and Jack thought he saw Ethan's hand begin to move under her short dress. Jack saw Sarah's face turn red for a moment before Ethan removed his hand. "Honestly, I would be lost without her," Ethan added. "And I would," Jack said, watching Ethan's reaction. He couldn't help but notice that Sarah looked down at the floor for a moment. "Sorry, I need to go to the bathroom," Jack added, breaking the silence in the room. "Of course," Ethan said. "Go down the corridor. First door on the left." Jack got up and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind him. He looked at himself in the mirror, millions of thoughts swarming through his head. The main one was that Sarah was cheating on him with Ethan. Ethan was right about one thing: Jack was a damn good analyst because he paid attention to detail. That's what Howard taught him when he first started. "Remember, son, it's not all about the numbers. In any business agreement, the devil is always in the details." The old man told him, "Pay attention to details. Trust your intuition and you will never go wrong." Jack took the old man's words to heart and they always helped him. Now he had other details to think about. First, there's Sarah's dress, or lack thereof. Secondly, the interaction between her and Ethan. Then there was her reaction to Ethan's touch and words. What kind of work wife is this? What does this even mean? And then there were all the little things he'd noticed over the past 3 months. Collectively, this all meant trouble, and if he was right, it would also mean the end of his marriage. He sensed something was going to happen and knew he needed to leave there with something tangible that he could use as evidence. He thought about just taking Sarah and leaving, but he felt that would only cause an argument and delay the inevitable. He saw his cell phone in his shirt pocket and noticed that the camera was peeking out of the pocket. This is it, he thought. He pulled out his phone and started recording video before putting it back in his pocket. Having done his business, he rinsed off the water and washed his hands. Having prepared himself, he opened the door. When he returned to the living room, he noticed Sarah suddenly sit up as she leaned over the coffee table. He sat up and saw the guilty look on her face. He picked up his glass and took a small sip. When he noticed in the sloughed granules of some kind of powder at the bottom of the glass, what the hell? He quickly put the glass back on the table and noticed that everyone was looking at him. He started to say something, but suddenly felt very tired and could not say anything coherent. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked. He looked at her confused. unable to speak. Ethan and the three men stood up. Sarah stood up too and grabbed Ethan's hand. He looked at them wondering what they were going to do next. He tried to get up but couldn't. "Why don't you take a little nap, Mark, old man?" Ethan said. As the other men lifted his legs onto the couch, Jack couldn't say or do anything. As Sarah took off his shoes, he wanted to get up, grab her and run away as quickly as possible. Sarah walked over to him and covered him with a blanket. He wanted to grab her by the throat but could not move his hands. She leaned over and kissed his forehead. "I'm sorry, Jack," she whispered in his ear. "I really love you." Unable to keep his eyes open, he fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, it was dark. He rubbed his eyes and looked around. No one seemed to be conscious. He listened and heard only snoring coming from above. Looking at his phone, he realized that he had been out for just over 3 hours. He stopped the video recording and put the phone back in his pocket. He quietly walked upstairs and peered into the master bedroom, trying to stay in the shadows. He saw Sarah naked on Ethan's bed, her hand on his chest and one leg on his. The other two men were also sleeping, one on the sofa under the window, the other in a large chair in one of the corners. He quietly went back downstairs. He wanted to know what he was drugged with, so he rummaged around Ethan's kitchen until he found a container with a lid. He poured the drink into the container and closed it tightly. Returning to the living room, he took Sarah's set of keys out of her bag and noticed a key he hadn't seen before. It looked like a house key, but not their house key. Acting on intuition, he removed the key and put it in his pocket. Then he had another thought and took Allison's phone, putting it in his pants pocket. He planned to review it later. Taking off his wedding ring, he carefully placed it on top of Sarah's bag so she could easily spot it. He put on his shoes and quietly walked out the door details. He thought he looked around but didn't see a security system or remote control anywhere near the door. Opening the front door, he tried the key he had taken from Sarah's ring. It fit perfectly, just as he thought. He quietly closed the door behind him, locking it with her key. He got into the car, closing the door as quietly as possible. He pulled out of the driveway and drove away, leaving his headlights on until he reached the street. He got an idea and drove into the store. He took out his phone and called his old friend R.K. Evans in the service. Jack knew him as Corporal Evans, but all his friends simply called him AR. After leaving the service, AR founded his own private detective agency and Jack helped him with financial brooksters. "Hello," AR said sleepily as he answered the call. "Hey RK, it's me." Jack said, "Sorry for the late call, but I need your help." "What happened?" Jack asked RK. "You got into a fight at the bar and they need you out." "Not really." Jack said, "Can you come to me in 15-20 minutes? "Yes, of course," said RK. "Is everything okay? What's going on?" "It's better not to talk about this on the phone." Jack said, "Got it." RK said, "I'll be with you in 20 minutes. "Thanks, buddy." Jack said, "I appreciate it." "Hey CRI, do or die right?" asked RK. Jack chuckled. "RK like to say that." "Hooray," he said Jack. They ended the call and Jack looked at the store. To hell with it. He thought he bought a pack of beer and a couple of packs of cigarettes. He hadn't smoked since he left the service, but at the moment he felt like he needed to do something to avoid hitting someone or something. He returned home and put the beer in the refrigerator, taking one for himself. He opened a pack of cigarettes and lit one while sitting on the couch, using the candy bowl with their photo inside as an ashtray. It was a wedding gift and Sarah loved to keep it filled with candy and sweets. He didn't care if Sarah complained about the smell, especially after what happened earlier. At that moment he heard the doorbell and saw that it was RK. He invited his old friend inside and offered him a beer. "What's wrong, buddy?" AR asked. As he opened his beer, Jack told him what happened earlier in the evening. "Damn it," AR said. When Jack finished, Jack handed him a container of wine with something mixed in it. "Can you analyze this?" he asked. RK nodded yes, but the results won't be out until Monday or Tuesday. RK said, I also want everything you can find out about Ethan Mitchell, John Whitehead, George Franklin, and Alan Jenkins. Jack said, I understand that Jenkins works for Henderson Manufacturing. I don't know who he works with. He took out his phone and found a video of those who were in Ethan's house. Here's a photo of them. I know it's not the best guide. IR said, do you want surveillance inside their house and yours? Yes, if you can. Jack said, I have the key if you need it. I didn't see the security system, but that doesn't mean anything. IR took the key and looked at it. No problem, he said. How did you get it? By the way, I took it from Sarah's ring. Jack said. RK nodded. You realize you probably won't be able to use the video from their house as evidence, right? Asked RK. I thought so. Jack said, this is personal. I don't care about the legal aspects right now, got it? I said. Jack gave RK a spare key to his house. Here is the key to my house, said Jack. He wrote down the 4-digit code and gave it to RK. And this is the code for my security system. I don't think I'll need the key. If you want, I can install the equipment while I'm here, RK said, handing back the key. High definition audio. Everything, heck. I can even record conversations on your landline. Do it. Jack said, how much will it cost me? Don't worry about it. RK said, you saved my life in Iraq. It's the least I can do for you. Thank you, old friend, said Jack. At least let me cover your expenses. Okay, if you insist. RK said, what else do you have? You showed me part of the video you took. Let's watch the whole thing and see what we can find. Jack turned on the video and started it from the beginning. They could see when the substance began to affect Jack. The camera captured the moment he lay down on the sofa and then showed for people looking at him. They heard Allison asked if he was okay, and Ethan told him to take a nap. Then they saw Sarah lean over and whisper something in his ear. Jack remembered this but could not remember what was said. Okay. Then Ethan said, let's go upstairs and start the real party. Yay, Sarah said. Heading up the stairs. The camera did not record any movement, but sounds of sex were heard coming from the bedroom. Jack finished the video and put his head in his hands. Ark placed an encouraging hand on his shoulder. I know this will be hard for you, but we will help you through it, he said. Jack nodded. Thank you. RK said, what are you going to do? Asked RK, I'm divorcing her. No questions asked. Jack said, got it. IR said, why don't you get out of here for a few days and let me and the boys handle it? What are you going to do? Jack asked. It's better for you not to know, said RK. All I can say is that we just witnessed a criminal conspiracy. If this works out, someone will end up in jail. But we need to get you out of here for a while. But I can help you, said Jack. RK shook his head. No, he said, you're in danger now, and the last thing we need is for you to attack one of them. Remember old Sergeant Carter? He's retired and lives in Vegas now. He owed me a few favors. He said he'd get you settled. If I ever want to visit Vegas, I'll call him and see what he can do for you. Mark nodded. Okay, he said. Let me set up the audio and video surveillance equipment here and then I will leave. You must remain calm. Understood. Jack nodded. Thank you, RK. You're a good friend. I appreciate it. Jack said. RK smiled. SFY brother. Do or die. RK said. Hooray, said Jack. He went out onto the back porch with a beer. RK installed audio and video surveillance equipment in the living room and bedrooms. RK also connected a landline phone. He set up the system so that all audio and video were stored on a cloud server that could be accessed from anywhere on the internet. When he was finished, he gave Jack the server address and credentials to access the files. He also showed Jack a switch that would allow him to turn the surveillance system on and off. I'll call Carter tomorrow and let him know what he says, RK said. One way or another we'll get you out of here. Don't do anything stupid. Okay. Got it, RK. Jack said. I hope so. Jack, he said, hold on my friend. I'll be in touch. I will, RK. Jack said, "Thank you again for everything." After RK left, Jack turned on his computer and opened his bank accounts. He still had one of the accounts from before the wedding registered in his name only. Since marrying Sarah, he had put 10 of his income into this account as an emergency fund. He hoped to use the money for the cruise as a surprise for Sarah, but those days are over. He transferred half the funds from their joint account to his old account, then paid off and canceled their joint credit cards. He still had a card in his name from his old account. With that closed, he packed enough clothes to last him for a few days and threw the suitcases into the car. Returning to the house, his gaze fell on the wedding portrait hanging above the fireplace. Sarah looked so beautiful in her wedding dress that day. He was the happiest man on earth and thought he had won the jackpot. But not anymore. Full of rage at her betrayal, he took a large hunting knife and cut the portrait. Once he was done, he looked around and took down all the photos that included Sarah. They were all thrown into the fireplace. He went upstairs and pulled her wedding dress out of the closet, then threw it into the fireplace. He thought about burning it all right away, but decided to wait. At that moment he was overcome with blind hatred for her, and he wanted her to personally see their marriage burn down. Then he had another idea, taking a bottle of beer. He sat down on the sofa again and picked up the phone. He emailed the video to himself and checked it on his laptop. He wrote a very carefully worded letter to each board member and Peter, the interim CEO, detailing what had happened. He remembered what Helen had told him earlier. The council will not respond to threats, but they will respond to thoughtful analysis of the situation. He didn't know Peter very well, having only spoken to him a few times, but he hoped he would be as reasonable as the council members without threatening anyone. He reminded the board that Ethan, as a manager, was required to act in accordance with the moral clause of his employment contract, and his actions, along with the actions of his wife, were exactly what the moral clause was written for. He also reminded them that their actions were not only criminal but could also cause lawsuits and scandal, a scandal that could easily destroy Mitchell Financial. He reminded them of his time with the company, telling them of his great respect for Alan. He said he hoped they would do the right thing. He reread the letter several times, editing a few words here and there. When he was happy, he wrote an email attaching the letter and video and sent it to Peter, as well as each board member, informing them that he would be on vacation the following week but could be contacted by email or phone. He assumed he wouldn't hear back until Tuesday and planned to leave the area by then. He then sat down, lit a cigarette and placed it in the candy bowl, watching as the heat from the burning cigarette burned Sarah's face in the photo at this moment. That's what he wanted to do to her. He took her phone and unlocked it. He knew the code because he had installed it. When he first received it, he scrolled through her text messages and became even angrier. It seemed like she and Ethan had been sleeping together for at least the last 6 months. But it was only in the last 3 months that Sarah started openly disrespecting him in front of Ethan. Of course, the fact that she slept with Ethan was already disrespectful enough. He found a treasure trove of photographs, a lot of incriminating evidence. How could anyone possibly store something like that? He wondered who took the photos and whether they were taken with this phone or another device. There were also videos on the phone. Videos of her having sex with Ethan and others. No wonder she acted as if she already knew them. He thought so this is what she was doing, claiming that she was on business trips. He copied everything he could and emailed it to himself from her device. By then he had drunk 6 bottles of beer and smoked half a pack of cigarettes, excising them on her face at the bottom of his plate. He looked outside and saw that the sun had already begun to rise soon. He thought she would wake up and realize that he was gone. He figured she'd be up and doing her business in an hour or two, so he grabbed his shotgun, made sure it was loaded and locked both locks on the door. He then lay back on the couch with the shotgun next to him and tried to sleep. Sarah woke up and looked at the clock on the nightstand next to Ethan's bed. She saw that it was 8:30, so she got out of bed and went to the bathroom to clean herself up. Ethan and the others started to wake up and were on their feet by the time she left the bathroom. Ethan put on his robe and looked at Sarah. "Do you want to go downstairs and make breakfast?" he asked, Jack might want some coffee if he's waking up. Yes, of course. She said she put on her robe, went downstairs barefoot and went to the kitchen. She put the coffee on and went into the living room to wake up her husband. Then she was surprised to find that he was not there. The Afghan she had thrown over him was discarded and his shoes were gone. She ran around the first floor thinking that perhaps he was in the bathroom. But he was not there. Looking out the window, she realized that their car had disappeared. She turned and saw his ring lying on her bag, which was lying on the coffee table. Oh, she gasped. She ran upstairs screaming. Ethan stopped her as she ran into the master bedroom. What's happened? Ethan asked. He's gone. She said, what do you mean gone? Ethan asked. He's gone. Damn it. She screamed. He must have woken up in the middle of the night and left. He took the car and left his wedding ring. Damn. Ethan said you better call him and try to find him. Tell him he should come and pick you up. Okay, she said. Running back downstairs, she put Jack's ring in her bag and started looking for her phone. But it wasn't there. She was sure she had brought it with her last night. She never went without it by then. Ethan was already downstairs. My phone is missing. She said it's no big deal. Ethan said use your home phone. You don't understand. She said I never go anywhere without. It's full of texts as well as photos and videos you sent me. If he found it, he probably already seen everything. Don't worry. Ethan said we need him to come here. The boys and I will take care of the rest. Now call him. Sarah nodded and picked up the phone in Ethan's living room. She nervously dialed Jack's cell phone number hoping he would answer hello. Jack said. When he answered, he sounded like he had just woken up. Jack. Honey, it's me. She said, what do you want? He growled. Sarah recoiled. He had never spoken to her like that before. She realized that he must be very angry. She didn't realize how much. Jack. Honey, you weren't there when I got up and I was worried about you. She said, are you okay? Why the hell do you care about me? He asked, honey, I need you to come and pick me up from Ethan's house. She said, can you do this for me? Please. Jack laughed out loud. Go to hell. He growled yesterday. I may have been a fool, but now I am not and you will never again be able to call me dear or beloved or anything else. Jack, please don't be mad at me. She begged. I really love you. Yes, of course. Jack said, tell me something new. Jack, we need to talk. She said, damn it. You're right. He said, then, I need you to come to Ethan and pick me up. She said, we can discuss this on the way home. Wrong answer, he said, causing her to recoil again. No way in the world am I going there. If you want to go home, we'll call a taxi. The only thing we need to discuss is how we will divide all the property. What do you mean? Let's split it, she asked. This is what usually happens in divorce. He said, I don't want a divorce. She said, please, can't we get over this? I also didn't want to be deceived and cheated on. He said, just come home if you want to talk. But I warn you, don't let Ethan or any of the others take you home. I'm armed and if any of them show up at my house, I'll use it. I swear to God you got me okay. I'll call a taxi. She said, do it. Jack said, and make sure you have cash or a bank card. Why, she asked. Because your credit card doesn't work anymore. Jack said, why doesn't my credit card work anymore? She asked. Because I can't. Last night, he said. Oh. She said quietly. By the way, do you happen to know where my phone is? Yeah. It's here on the coffee table. Jack said, interruption of photos and videos. By the way, now I know what you and that idiot have been doing for the last 3 months. When you claim to be on business trips, they will really help me in my divorce case. Oh God, she whispered. Jack, I'm so sorry. She said, I never meant to hurt you. Shut up and save your useless excuses for someone who cares. He said, now, if you want to talk, do it now, while you can, and come alone. I'll be there. Mark, she said, after ending the call. Putting down the phone, she looked at Ethan. So what? Ethan asked. He won't come, she said. He said I should come and talk to him. Okay, Ethan said, we'll take you there. She shook her head. No, she said, he's on. And he said, don't let any of you show up. I think he really means it. You didn't hear him? I've never heard him so angry in my life. Ethan thought for a moment, then walked into his office. He returned with a syringe in his hand. Here's what we'll do, he said. Put this in your bag. Call a taxi and we'll follow you to your house the first chance you get. You open the lid and inject it into his arm wallet. Then call me. We'll be there. What is this? She asked. This is a special mixture I made for him. Ethan said. It works pretty quickly. Don't worry. It won't hurt him. He handed her the syringe and watched as she carefully placed it in her bag. Okay, she said. Just promise me you won't hurt him. We'll try, Ethan said. Really, guys? He added, looking at the three men who laughed. He turned back to Sarah. Go call a taxi. She made an appointment with the taxi driver in half an hour and went upstairs to finish getting ready. When the driver arrived, she got into the car and drove away. Ethan and his three friends got into his car and followed Sarah, parking about a block from her house. None of them paid attention to the white van parked on the street in front of Ethan's house. A few minutes after speaking with Sarah, Jack's phone rang again. He saw that Kay was calling, so he answered. What's happened? He asked. Just wanted to let you know that my guys intercepted a conversation between your wife and her accomplice. Kay said what Jack asked. How the wonders of modern technology, my friend. He said you'd be surprised what we can do these days with a parabolic microphone. Anyway, your wife called a taxi and her boyfriend will be following him. They plan to inject you with something and kidnap you. Whatever it is, it's in her bag. Apparently she's going to inject you with it the first chance she gets. My guys will be keeping an eye on Ethan and his team when they leave. Damn. Jack said. Yes, said RK. Anyway, be careful. I'll text you when they come out. Turn on the surveillance equipment when she gets there and I'll keep an eye on it. I'm only a few houses away. I'll call the cops when the time comes. Be prepared. Okay. Jack said thank you. He waited and received the message about half an hour later. They are on their way. Showtime. Jack said to himself he knew he had about 20 minutes before they arrived. So he hid the shotgun in a place where Sarah wouldn't immediately notice it and turned on the surveillance equipment. He went to the kitchen and grabbed a plastic bag with a lock for the syringe and a napkin. He saw the taxi stop in front of his house and watched as Sarah paid the driver and got out of the car. She looked extremely nervous and had a hand on her bag slung over her left shoulder. He turned on the fireplace and watched as the photographs in her dress began to burn. She walked to the door and slowly opened it. She winced when she walked in and smelled cigarette smoke. Jack didn't care. Her eyes opened wide when she saw the destroyed portrait above the fireplace and became even wider when she looked at her dress and photographs. Turning to Ash, my wedding dress, she exclaimed. Our photos. Jack, why are you doing this? Tears rolled down her face, but it didn't bother him. I wanted you to see for yourself what your actions did to us, he said. She looked at the beer bottles and cigarette butts in her favorite candy bowl. I thought you had a low tolerance for alcohol, she said. And I never knew you smoked. I used to smoke, but I quit, he said. As for the other thing, the truth is that I become a real villain when I get drunk. I made the decision to never get drunk again, just like you made the decision to become Ethan's. Oh God, Jack, she said, crying. What have I done? You tell me. He said. What happened to you? You were the sweetest, kindest, most level-headed woman I've ever known. Who are all these men you slept with? Mostly clients, she said quietly. Ethan made me, oh, bloody wonderful. Jack said. You know your actions could ruin Mitchell Financial. Tell me, how long have you been planning all this bullying of me? Was it your idea or was it something Ethan suggested? She looked at him shocked. I never, she began, but Jack interrupted her. Shut up, he said, taking out his phone. He played the video, letting her hear the conversation with her ICC compliance, standing above him. Her face went white when she heard her own words. "How did you get it?" she asked. "It doesn't Brookster," he said. "The important thing is that Peter and the board members now have this video. The police will have it too. Not only are we getting a divorce, but if I get my way, you'll end up in jail for a very long time. I just want to know why you don't understand." She said, "It's a long story. Maybe you can tell me one day when I'm not inclined to wring your neck." Jack said he watched as she began to open the bag, but before she could do anything, he snatched it from her hands and emptied the contents onto the coffee table. He saw a syringe with a dark liquid and took it with a napkin that he had prepared in advance. "Is this what you plan to end for me?" he asked. "Do you even know what this is?" "Not really." She said, "Not really." He asked sarcastically, "You mean you were going to inject me with this without having the slightest idea what it actually was or what it could do? You're sick. Did you know that Ethan told you to do it?" She nodded. "Yes," she said quietly. "Okay," Jack said. "Here's what we'll do. You call Ethan. Put it on speaker so I can hear both sides. You tell Ethan you did what he asked. I'll take it upon myself. Don't you dare tell him I'm here waiting. Do you understand him? You want me to set him up?" she asked. "Yes," said Jack. "Have questions?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I understood everything." "Okay," Jack said. "Now call him, no tricks." Jack watched as she dialed the number and put it on speakerphone. "Ethan, it's me, Ellie." She said, "Everything is ready." He passed out. "Well done. Go," Ethan said. "We're on our way." She ended the call and looked at Jack. "He'll kill me when he sees you're not unconscious." She said, "Your problem?" Jack said, "Remember, no signal. Nothing that could give away the truth. Otherwise I might kill you myself." He sat down in the chair and waited for Ethan to come inside. When he saw Ethan and his 3 friends through the window, he closed his eyes but left them slightly open so he could see what was happening. Ethan enters the room and his eyes weigh heavily on the situation. He sees Sarah who, despite the circumstances, remains calm, with words of encouragement. Ethan approaches Jack and intent on finishing what he started. However, suddenly Jack opens his eyes and enters into active confrontation. The situation is heating up quickly. Jack, in full combat readiness, confuses Ethan with an unexpected counterattack. The tension in the air is palpable and every moment feels decisive. But then other participants in the events burst into the room and it seems that the balance of power will be restored again. At this moment, AR appears. He instantly assesses the situation and begins to act, calling Jack to reason. He convinces Jack that revenge will not bring him satisfaction and that the best course is to let justice prevail. Jack hesitates, listening to Arkay's words. There is an internal struggle in his eyes as he realizes the consequences of his possible actions. Alti Brook Seelai. He decides to retreat, slowly putting his weapon away. This moment becomes a turning point and everyone breathes a little more freely. Jack sat on the couch and watched as Arkay checked that both Sarah and Ethan were securely tied up. The other 3 were in the yard, also tied up by Ark people. They heard the sirens of police cars stopping in front of Jack's house. "Give me your phone," Arkay said. "I'll go talk to the police before they come inside." Jack nodded and handed Arkay his phone. When Arkay left, Ethan raised his head and turned to Mark. His grin finally disappeared. Apparently he needed the thought of imminent death for this to happen. "You know, my father always loved you more than me," Ethan said. Jack shook his head. "That's not true, Ethan." Jack said he always hoped that one day you would grow up and be able to take his place. 3 large policemen entered the house and inspected the situation, picking up Ethan and Sarah. They read them their rights and led them out to the patrol cars. One officer looked at the syringe sitting on the coffee table in a plastic bag and picked it up. "Is this what they were going to use against you?" he asked Jack. "Yes, this is it," Jack said. The officer took notes, taking Jack's full statement. After about half an hour he turned to Jack. "You're lucky. You know." He said no. Jack said my fellow Marine had my back. The officer smiled and nodded. "Siri," the officer said, shaking Jack's hand. "Hooray." Jack replied. After they left, RK walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. "Do you have another one of these?" he asked, pointing to the beer bottles. "I think I have a couple more." Jack said, "It's too early for that, don't you think, after all this?" "No," RK said. As Jack handed him a cold bottle. "How are you holding up?" "Okay." Jack said, "I feel like I'm in Iraq. I think I need some rest." "Yes, about that," said RK. "I talked to Vince this morning. He said he'd take care of everything. If you want to go to Vegas for a few days, tell me to give you his number. I might do that." Jack said, "I need to take care of a couple of things here. First." RK pulled out a couple of cards from his pocket and handed them to Jack. "Here's Vince's number, if you want to call." He said, "The second card is for the divorce lawyer I work with, Laura Nelson. She's a real shark. Hates cheaters. I took it upon myself to call her this morning. She said she's expecting you in her office on Monday morning." "Thank you," Jack said, nodding his head for all. "Hey, Simper, why, brother? Do or die," RK said. Jack chuckled. "Bloody hello," he replied. After they finished their beer, RK stood up and looked around. "Looks like you have a bit of cleaning to do around here, so I'll go," he said. "See you later, friend." Jack said, "I'll go get some surveillance equipment." Later RK left and Jack started cleaning the house. That night he received a call from Peter Brooks DH. "Jack, this is Peter Brooks," the older man said when Jack answered the phone. "Yes, Mr. Brooks. How can I help you?" Jack asked. "For starters, you can call me Peter." He said, "I received your email and watched the video. The board members did the same. We all agree with what you said in your letter, which I must say was quite impressive." "Thank you, Peter," Jack said. "Please," he replied. "We also agreed that both Sarah and Ethan should be fired immediately, especially since they are both currently in custody. I'm heading to the county jail to handle this personally. There are a couple other things." "What is this?" Jack asked. "We think you could use a few days to rest and relax." Peter said, "Is there a place you'd like to go for a while?" "A friend offered to watch me in Vegas for a few days." Jack said, "I have an appointment with the divorce lawyer on Monday and then I'll probably go Vegas." "Huh," I asked Peter. "Well, I can't think of a better place to get away from it all." "Have a nice trip, Jack. See you in a week from Monday." "Thanks, Peter. I'll do that." Jack said, "There are a couple more things." Peter said, "We unanimously agreed that with Ethan gone, you would be the best candidate to fill his position." Jack asked, "Absolutely." Peter said, "We're very impressed with the way you handled this situation, and the board of directors has been looking at you for a while now. I won't lie to you. They're very pleased with your performance. Of course, with this position there will be a raise and a few other benefits, but I think you deserved it." "Thank you, Peter." Jack said, "You don't need to thank me yet." Peter said, "The first thing we need you to do is oversee an external audit that we will conduct. We will bring in auditors from an outside firm to review everything Ethan touched during his tenure. They will report directly to you and you will report the results to me, whether they are good, bad or neutral. I think it's a good idea." Jack said, "Well, I'll leave it in your capable hands. In the meantime, have a nice trip and see you in a week from Monday." Peter said, "See you later, Peter." Jack said, "Thank you." After a call from Peter, Jack finished cleaning the house, then mowed the lawn, as he usually did on Saturdays. He then called Vince Carter and the two of them chatted about everything. "So do you want to come over for a few days and have fun?" GMY asked. "Yes, of course." Jack said, "Okay." Johnny said, "Come. I'll give you a nice room and show you how everything works here. Then you're on your own. And remember, this is Las Vegas, not Bangkok." They laughed. "I'll remember, Vince." Jack said, "See you Monday night." See you, Mark. Annie said RK came in and picked up his equipment. Just wanted to give you a little update. RK said the cops searched Ethan's house and found a mountain of evidence. Damn. Jack said I stayed for dinner and Jack fell asleep. Soon after, exhausted both mentally and physically, the next day he began throwing all of Sarah's things into trash bags. He took them to the garage and decided to wait to take them all to the charity until he knew for sure that she would go to prison. The next morning he was at Laura Nelson's office and shot and was immediately ushered inside. She studied his evidence and documents and took notes as he spoke. She explained California divorce laws to him and told him that everything was usually divided equally. Since they had no children, and the house was his before their marriage, the court would likely allow him to keep the house, since he had already split their bank accounts. She said the court would likely give the half remaining in their account to Sarah. She also clarified that her adultery cannot be used in the divorce case. However, the criminal charges against Sarah will likely be taken into account by the judge in any decision. She also said it's unlikely he'll have to pay Alice on child support while she's in prison, but that could change when she's released. I will do everything I can to make this process as painless as possible. Laura said I will draw up the documents and submit them for review. If she signs them as they are, I will present them to the judge. From now on, the case will have to wait 6 months. Jack agreed and gave her an advance for the job. Before leaving on his way home, he stopped at the county jail to tell Sarah that he was filing for divorce. He sat down at the table and watched as they brought her. She looked gaunt and the orange robe didn't particularly flatter her figure. They held up their tubes to communicate through a thick plexiglass shield. Hi, Sarah. Jack said hi. Jack, she replied. I just wanted to let you know that I saw a lawyer today, and I'm filing for divorce. He said I thought so. She said H is your hearing. He asked her tomorrow morning. She said the prosecutor demands that we be H held in custody without bail. I think that would be better. He told her tell me something and I want to hear the truth from God. What is this? She asked what the hell happened to you. He asked her. She lowered her eyes embarrassed. At first everything was going well at work. She said Ethan seemed like any other boss. It all started after Howard died. Ethan was furious that he wasn't promoted and he blamed you, saying his dad probably set it up so you got the job. This is crazy, Jack said. Howard always said he hoped Ethan would become CEO one day. I know. She said we went to New York that weekend and that's when it all started. We were at a club with some of our clients dancing and drinking nothing too wild. Yes, I flirted a little, but I didn't think I was going out of line. Suddenly I started feeling really good and before I knew what was happening, I found myself in bed with 2 other guys. Ethan joined later. She paused for a moment before continuing. The next morning I realized what happened and I felt very guilty. She said then Ethan showed me some photos and videos he took and said I had to do whatever he wanted or he would show them to you. Said he was blackmailing you. I'm not surprised. Jack said, do you think you can ever forgive me? She asked. He chuckled before answering, not just no, but damn no. He said you cheated on me with that bastard and God knows who else you're crazy. Don't even ask. So we can be friends. I understand. Jack, she said. I hope it was worth it. He said goodbye. Sarah. He hung up and watched her to the same tears rolling down her cheeks. He went home, packed his things and headed to Vegas. He met up with Vince Carter and they had dinner and reminisced about old times. After that, Vince showed him around the city and gave him some gambling tips, then walked him to his room. When they entered, Jack saw a cute young brunette sitting on the bed. She stood up as they entered. Jack, this is Candy. Vince. Carter said, she'll be your guide while you're here. GNY, that's really not necessary. Jack said nonsense. Some said Vince. This is exactly what you need after what your wife did to you. Relax. Have fun and remember what happens here stays here usually. Everyone laughed. Well, I have to go have fun, he added. Before leaving, Jack turned to Emily. Tell me, dear, you began from an escort agency. Emily asked. Not anymore. Thanks to Vince. He got me out of a really bad situation, and, thanks to him, I'm clean and working at a real job. He told me a little about you and asked if I would mind spending some time with you. That's all. If you want, I'll leave and never bother you again. No, Jack said. He's right. I need some company right now, and you're a very nice woman. Do you want to go get a drink or something? Sounds good, she said, smiling. They went to a club, drank a few COF cocktails, then talked and danced for several hours before returning to his room, where she stayed the night helping him forget his problems. The rest of the week went more or less the same, and by Friday, he was ready to go home and get on with his life. Emily didn't want to let him go, but she understood. She gave him her phone number and email address in case he ever wanted to contact her. He liked her, but he didn't think it would ever develop into a full-fledged relationship. She was much younger than him and had her whole life ahead of her. Still, he thought, who knows? He returned home with a smile on his face, memories of candy running through his head. When he returned, he learned the latest news about Sarah and her accomplice. The judge, after seeing the evidence presented by the prosecutor, ruled that all of them would be held without bail. He also received confirmed Brooks Ion from Laura that Sarah had been notified of the divorce filing. According to Laura, Sarah signed them immediately and the documents were filed in court. In 6 months he will be free of her forever. The following Monday he came to work to find that all his belongings had been moved to Ethan's old office. Everyone welcomed his return and wished him luck in his new position. He settled into the new office and met with the external auditors. He placed them and met his new assistant, Marcia then. He had known her since she joined the company several years ago. He liked her. He knew that she was married and received high ratings from her previous managers. She also knew about his situation and tried not to mention it. The audit revealed many inconsistencies in Ethan's documentation. For starters, he falsified his travel reports on several trips he took with Sarah. The auditors then discovered that Ethan had mismanaged some of their clients' accounts. This was immediately reported to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Ethan soon faced federal charges. Jack and Peter spent a lot of time in the following months cleaning up the mess Ethan left behind. Luckily, they didn't lose any clients due to their prompt response, but they did have to have some very awkward discussions with other executives who were clearly unhappy. Meanwhile, Jack kept in touch with Candy, mostly by email. Eventually, she told him that she had met someone and they were getting pretty serious about each other. He was not surprised and wished her all the best. At the same time, Sarah and Ethan's trials dragged on as charges were added and motions were passed back and forth. Jack found himself testifying against his wife and her accomplice, although her defense team tried to keep him from doing so, saying he was under no obligation to testify against his own wife. I may not be required to, but I want to, he told her lawyer. Besides, in a few weeks she won't be my wife anymore. But the jury was shocked when they heard his testimony and even more shocked when they were shown the video. Jack took that Friday night. The day finally arrived when the jury announced their verdicts. Jack and Peter sat in the courtroom and watched as Sarah, Ethan, and 3 other men were brought in. None of them could look Jack in the eyes. By now the trial has become something of a meta circus. The court was brought into order and the judge asked if the jury had reached their decision. The foreman stood up and announced what they had done. Everyone waited with bated breath as the charges, including conspiracy to kidnap. Ethan faces additional charges. All of them were found guilty of all charges brought against them. The judge set a sentencing date and the 5 already convicted conspirators were led out of the courtroom. Jack and Peter walked out walking by a crowd of reporters shoving cameras in their faces. About 10 days later they were sentenced. The judge made it clear that he was completely disgusted with all 5 and actually threw the book at them. A month after the sentencing, Jack was sitting in his office looking through some documents, when Marcia called him on the intercom. Mr. Clay, Dr. Kristen Mitchell is here to see you. She said. The name caught Jack's attention. Send her. He said. The door opened and Jack saw an attractive blonde enter his office. Her hair fell below her shoulders and she wore a skirt that reached just below her knees. She smiled as she walked up to him and extended her hand. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Tehua." She said. He shook her hand and invited her to sit down. "Please call me Jack," he said. "Would you like something to drink? Coffee would be great." She said back, "Please, please, and please call me Kristen." Jack asked Mara to get them a cup of coffee and sat down as his assistant left the office. "Mitchell," Jack said, looking at her. "Do you have anything to do with Howard? Perhaps his daughter?" She smiled and shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm his niece." "I see." Jack said. "I'm surprised I didn't meet you earlier. I thought I had met almost everyone in Helen's family. I've been very busy." She said. "I was in France when Uncle Howard died and couldn't come back for his funeral. So what can I do for you?" he asked. "I just wanted to meet the man who put my cousin in his place." She said. "I take it there's not much love between you two." Jack said. She shook her head. No, she said quietly. "I'm just glad to see that he was finally forced to pay for his crimes. I'm so sorry for what he did to you. As far as I know about, you didn't deserve any of this and I'm sorry. I heard a lot about you from my uncle. So I see you're a doctor." Jack said. "You are a doctor?" "No, I have a PhD in business and economics." She said. "I teach at Akla. My uncle and I have many similar interests, but I am more focused on academic science. And no, I'm not interested in moving to the core office upstairs." Jack laughed at this. They talked for a while longer before she said she needed to get back to work. Jack didn't want the conversation to end, and in truth he was interested in this woman. "Listen, Kristen," Jack said. "I would like to continue this discussion with you. Say over dinner. That is, if you don't mind being seen in public with a modest MBA degree." She smiled and her eyes sparkled. "There is nothing humble about being an MBA," she said, "and I would really like to be seen with you in public. Dinner would be great. How about Red Lobster tonight at 7 ZU? She handed him a card with her number and address. "This is Red Lobster," Jack said, taking the card from her. "I'll pick you up at 6:30. If that works. See you then." "Jack, it was great meeting you," she said. Before leaving, Jack and Kristen dated for several months and fell in love. She almost knocked him to the floor, smothering him with kisses when he asked her to marry him. "I understand, right?" Jack asked when she finally allowed him to breathe. "No," she said. "Hell yeah. Maureen, now take me upstairs." "Yes, ma'am," Jack said as he carried his bride upstairs. Yes, he thought things are going well. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you. And go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.